Let's talk about software going to zero, the impending doom of having no more commercial viability in the software space, SaaS disappearing, no need for WordPress or plugins or commercial companies, because everyone can build their own software. This is a take that, we've seen it, coming through the Twitter sphere. If you're following AI closely, especially if you're in the software space like I am and others, this is something that's always on top of mind. Am I losing my job to Claude Code and all these other models and systems? Will it go to zero? You have some people saying SaaS is going to be disrupted and it's all going to just go away because people are going to build their own software. Here's where my stance is. I think it's going to change, and I think people will become software builders. They just aren't going to realize it. But just hold that thought for a second. I have this ongoing little side debate with Justin Jackson from Transistor. He's the co-founder of Transistor.fm. It started a year ago where he was firmly planted in, hey, no one's going to just replace their apps with agentic coding. People aren't going to want to do this. You need an understanding of software, then you have to maintain it, et cetera, et cetera. Jason Fried recently posted on Twitter. I'm just going to read the last paragraph here of a longer sort of multi-paragraph message he put out. Giving everyone access to software building tools doesn't mean everyone becomes a builder. A powerful excavator doesn't turn a homeowner into a contractor. Most people just want the hole dug by someone else. They don't want the responsibility either. And there's multiple takes. Kevin Rose actually chimed in on that Twitter thread. I'll just read this first sentence here. He says, all true today, but this is a 3-year take. AI will mature to the point where there's no such thing as building software. And this is where I tend to agree with Kevin. And I'll also take a step back and say anyone who talks with like absolute certainty in this space, unless you're Anthropic, OpenAI, NVIDIA, like the people who are doing this stuff now and are like largely controlling the outcomes of this, you can't talk with any uncertainty. And actually, neither could they, because we've seen the disruption of open source models coming out of China and all this other stuff. It makes you wonder who actually has control of this, and is this stuff actually doing what it says? So I guess I'll also say I'm like in the middle of all of this. I have my doubts of AI. I have a lot of like positive takes on AI and what it's been able to do for me for the last few years. But I'm not all in on either side. But here's what I do know. And here's what I've been witnessing with, using Claude Code and using ChatGPT and Codex, and more specifically, what I've seen ChatGPT doing recently. So I'm building a piece of software, and I started asking questions to ChatGPT as like doing some market research. And just asking just like broad general questions about this particular software company. And I was just asking like, how do they, what's their tech stack when it comes to building this XYZ thing? And then what it did for me next was, of course, it, answered the question. Who knows how accurate it was, but it answered a question. And then it did something new, which has been coming to this newer flavor of the model. It said, well, how about I show you, would you like to know about their top 3 customers? Would you like to know how they do their like sales outreach and all this other stuff? It gave me like 3 options, which I didn't even ask, but it already inferred that I'm doing research against this company, and maybe I want more. And that's the underlining thing that I think maybe Jason and Justin might be forgetting in all of this stuff. Putting the coding and the software aside for a second, these platforms want you to stay on the platform. This is no different than when we had AOL way back in the day. Dial up, you dialed in, you had a network of things that you could do on AOL, and they wanted you to stay there. They didn't want you to go to CompuServe. And then we had 20 years of the open web when Comcast and cable modems and faster internet and broadband came to, at least in my perspective, the United States. And it was a browser, and then it was a browser wars. And then it was Microsoft and Apple would say, this is the only browser you can use by default. It's Internet Explorer or it's Safari. And then Chrome came along and disrupted that experience. And for years, we've had these big decades. We've had these big companies who are, leading a new tech revolution go, hey, we got this new tech revolution, but by the way, we want you to stay right here. And whether that was with AOL or Internet Explorer or then Facebook, you have these massive companies that are valuing themselves and trying to push their business by keeping you on that platform. And this is where I'm starting to see ChatGPT and Claude Go, right? I'm just using these two as examples because these are my daily drivers. I try to get into Gemini, I just can't. But I think they're going to be a dominant player as I explain this more to you. So all of these platforms are going to want us to stay here. And I think this is where some of my colleagues and folks like Jason Fried, and could be smarter than me, obviously they are, but I think this is maybe what they're undercutting here is these platforms want you to be in the ecosystem of their chatbot, to distill it down to something simple. And ChatGPT is already prompting me to say, hey, how about this? How about this? Have you thought about it this way? How about I show you something like this? And they're giving you 3 options. And what does that 3 options thing do? It's very subtle, but the product engineer in my head and the marketing person in my head goes, oh, I got to pick one of these 3. Now, how do I get that? I want them all. Can you explain them all to me? And you could say that, but what these platforms will do is, I'll give you 3 more, and I'll give you 3 more. To eventually, like, you're picking one, and then you're going back to another. And what are you doing? You're staying in the platform. You're opening another ChatGPT tab. In ChatGPT, you can fork chats. And you can go, you can fork a chat and then continue chatting in the, where you forked the chat. It's a very, like, mirror effect kind of thing. And they're keeping their user on the system. And we saw recently that now you can, like, import memory from ChatGPT into Anthropic. And memory is going to be a huge thing, right? Which I think a lot of people are also understating and not realizing that memory eventually will be locked down. Like, it won't be easy to migrate this stuff because they know this is what's going to keep you here. And again, for how many years did we see social platforms, because let's just look at these things as social platforms, wanting you to be there and create a mass adoption and then shut it down where you are living in this space. It's no longer open. We've learned that lesson a gazillion times in the tech space. So as these companies continue to push for crazy higher valuation, as they continue to put out the buzzwords and the marketing speak of, oh my God, we're solving everything. We're solving and selling intelligence to you. They haven't done it, or they're delaying the rollout of it because they're all just like watching each other see what they're doing. And while they do that, they continue to keep you on that platform and build into it. So how does that relate to software? These systems can create anything, let's say. As these systems get more powerful, as you're developing more software and they're learning to develop software on the fly, I mean, you can, if you're a Claude user, you can ask it to build a little mini app, it runs it in Claude. And Justin Jackson recently talked about this. This is when I pinged him again, taking a quote out of his podcast, where he said, I wanted to build an app to do vacation time requests at the company. So I built it in Claude, but it just made, the artifact in Claude, which is essentially like a mini hosting app inside of Claude. And I can just point people to that. In my own team, I can just share that with them and they can interact with it. So my argument to building software a year ago was, you're going to build it, you're going to deploy it, you're going to have a GitHub account, and anybody can do that and run that. Now it's happening inside of Claude. I think this stuff is all coming to the operating system level of our lives. And that's where I look at Microsoft and Apple and I go, are either of you ready for this? Because if Claude can run an app in its ecosystem, in the browser that you're using, it can pull in and create an environment for anyone to do anything. This is not, like Kevin Rose said, this is a 3-year take. This isn't going to come soon, but I believe that that Anthropic and Claude and Gemini are going to push for an agentic operating system where you just live in that operating system. And the ones who are really in the sights are Microsoft and Apple, and maybe not Google because they have Android as their operating system. But if you're a user in there and you go, I just want, show me this website, show me the NewYorkTimes.com. Why couldn't one of these chatbots just pull up a browser instantly and show, or just print the website right in front of you and say, here are the headlines, or here's a text-based version of the headlines? That experience then lives right there in your space. The one who is really going to lose the fastest is going to be Facebook, because as these systems get more increased memory to what you do, you won't need to log into a social network anymore, because it will just go and grab the stuff you want and present it in a way that you want it. You want joyful content? Well, since, 60% of the US is using ChatGPT and there's a photo storage there, maybe if you're connected to your mom, her photos will go right into your ChatGPT feed, or your friends go right into your ChatGPT feed, or Facebook does some kind of data deal as their business declines and says, okay, any social content will be structured and ingested into ChatGPT, and it will allow ChatGPT to build you what they'll call a social graph of your friends and family. But effectively, it's going to be a curated social experience connected up to your email address, or connected up to your inbox. It's going to bring in everything that you need. It's going to bring in your productivity, your life stuff, and news. And it's going to build it in the way that you want it. So Facebook is the same for millions and millions of users. You'll have your own Facebook designed and curated the way that you want it. It will be like having tens of millions of Facebooks being built for each individual person. Thus, we get to software, where these systems will go, hey, I noticed that you got a lot of stuff on your plate. How about we just make you this to-do app? Or how about we give you this to-do screen to do the stuff on it? Oh, do you want to customize that to-do app? Oh, we noticed that a lot of the news that you're reading also has a podcast equivalent. Would you like a podcast player in your dashboard? Like, you can listen to this stuff? We noticed that you have a lot of email coming in. Would you like to build some kind of like CRM or management system to keep track of all this and keep track of the people that have been emailing you about your lawn care services business? And we'll put it all together. And your top 5 people that, have paid you are right here in this little dashboard. It's going to be about instantly creating software for you and then giving you the options to customize that software or that experience, to the point where you won't reach out for a lot of the traditional software, and you'll be put into a place where you can customize that experience for you. Imagine if Microsoft and Apple don't do anything. And, well, first of all, you'd have to imagine that my take is actually going to come true. But then imagine if Apple and Microsoft don't do anything in, let's say, 5 years or whatever. Let's say my thing comes to life in a year from now. Anyone looking at their Windows desktop, anyone who gets accustomed to that, like, real rich, bespoke, customized, tailored experience to consuming stuff on the web inside of ChatGPT or Anthropic, they'll be looking at Windows and Mac going, why can't I customize this the way I do it over there? And then it slowly starts to peel away of the operating system. You know what? Why do I spend my time in this when I can just spend my time in this browser window? And this is where I think they start to push into those areas of build your own computing experience. And it's not like a blank canvas. The average user doesn't open up to a blinking cursor in a terminal and says, what would you like to do today? It's just built for you. And then the recommendations naturally start to happen as you use the system. They will push into these areas to keep you on the platform. Now, Microsoft, or let's say Windows and Mac, how do they compete in this space? They would have to give you the same kind of tooling where you would just talk to Windows and talk to Apple and say, I need this piece of software customized, or I need this operating system to do something. Just like where everyone's jumping on ClaudeBot and CoWork and all these other like agentic swarms of agents. If this continues down that path, people will want that in their operating system level. At their operating system level, they're going to say, God, I'm so sick of opening up Outlook and Apple Mail. Just give me the summary. Because operating systems are going to go, well, why do we keep promoting all these other apps to do this? This is where the operating system industry, I think, is getting upended. Because for years, you had that monopoly of Windows and Apple, and then Android came in, at least on the mobile front, maybe with Chrome OS for like Chromebooks and stuff. Discarding Linux as a non-consumer operating system, though I do think there'll be a rise in it because of this stuff. If you look at just Apple and Windows as the dominant players, they set the foundation. More importantly, they set the distribution. So you couldn't go to Dell or Toshiba and buy a laptop without Windows because they're the ones that set up the distribution. So what we'll see in the future is, and then the whole point of it is this: for decades, they set the foundation, they set the operating system, but they couldn't do it all. They couldn't build all the apps in the world that people wanted, so they open up to developers in the greater industry to do other stuff. So you could build on top of it. But as the cost of that stuff goes down, pending all this AI stuff actually pans out, operating systems are going to say, yeah, maybe we don't sell on top. And look what they did. I mean, my God, the perfect examples are browsers number one and productivity suites number two. Microsoft Office, famously crushing Lotus Notes and Corel and like all these other players in the space. There's plenty of examples of this. But now they won't have to even think about partnering if they can build an operating system experience that just spins up software for you. Yeah, that's where I think that's my crazy take on all of this stuff. And I'm not saying, like, a lot of things have to go right. And a lot of things are going to take time. But Anthropic and Claude and Gemini and all the other ones, they're going to want you to spend as much time there. And at some point, that's going to be a piece of software to do a thing. Operating systems are going to say the same thing. We don't want you to feel like you can't do anything in this static operating system because you're feeling it over at ChatGPT and Anthropic. That ability to just change stuff by just talking to it will be a thing. And they're going to need to combat that. So how does that affect the operating system level of day-to-day life and apps in general? It's a long take. I appreciate you sticking around. Let me know what you think. Am I crazy? Probably, but who knows what this stuff is going to do in 5-10 years.